Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Traditionally Speaking. My name is Tom, and my friend Joe and I are going to be talking to you today about one of those subjects which is absolutely core to so many people's Christmas, the humble Christmas card.
Oh, humble is not the word for it. Oh my goodness.
Well, that's an interesting thing about it, isn't it? Because the Christmas card, I mean, we always assume that it's one of those things that came around in the Victorian era, but in actual fact, they've been with us for so much longer than that. The first known Christmas card was sent by a German doctor. He was a physician to the Prussian court, and his name was Michael Meyer. And he sent a card, a greetings card, to James I of England, who was also James VI of Scotland. And that was a Rosicrucian Christmas card because it had a festive greeting in the shape of a rose. So little could he have imagined all the way back in the 17th century that he was going to kickstart a tradition that was going to be with us for many, many years to come.
And covers so much ground in so many countries and becomes so important to so many, especially through the years. But of course, and while he was the first, and must admit it, uh, obviously we know who really started the Christmas card tradition. You want to go ahead and talk about that a little bit, Tom?
Well, it's really quite intriguing, isn't it, to think about the controversy behind that, because we all think of the first commercially available Christmas card as being the one which was spearheaded by Sir Henry Cole. Now, he was a London-based inventor, and his card was designed by John Calcott Horsley, who was a famous Victorian illustrator, and that came out in 1843. But the reason why there's controversy around it is because there has been later research into the existence of Christmas cards, and we now believe that there was an Edinburgh-based publisher and printer who, in 1841, a whole 2 years beforehand, he had been sending out Christmas cards which were printed with a greeting that says, "A good new year and many o' them," which is a Scottish greeting, because obviously in Scotland, the New Year was probably the more prevalent celebration than Christmas at that particular point in history. So the difference is, of course, these were sent out to a small select group of people, but the Henry Cole card was designed for large commercial distribution, and he, as a result, has always been considered to be the official popularizer of the commercial Christmas card.
Yeah, actually, when he did that, it was 1840, which interestingly happened to be the same year as Dickens released A Christmas Carol. So it's kind of funny the way the two tied together. But basically, he just wanted to increase the use of the new post office that he had helped form and get going in England. And at the time, that first Christmas card, he advertised and introduced it as being 1 shilling each. And then it later became known as the penny post because it was a penny to send a Christmas card out. So, and that's what really got that thing going. But he was actually just trying to promote the post office that he had pretty much helped find in the UK at the time.
Yeah, if only it still cost a penny to send a Christmas card now.
Yeah. You never mind. I won't even go there. I'm not even going to talk about that, especially with inflation being what it is now. But and of course, now so much is done digitally, but let's not get off the mark on that just yet.
Yes.
But and then of course, out here in the US, it was in the 1840s they were doing it, but it was so expensive because we did not have the post that the United Kingdom had. So it was very costly to try and send even so much as a letter. So it didn't, obviously, while a few people sent some Christmas greetings, still there was more things actually going on at Valentine's Day and for the New Year than there was at Christmas.
And it's amazing, isn't it, to look at the difference in styles and content over the years, because there was a kind of popular assumption that the early Christmas cards were quite religious because of the Christian basis of the Christmas celebrations. But in actual fact, the earliest Christmas cards were really based around family and community and lovely landscape winter scenes. It wasn't until a few years later that the religious Christmas cards started to become more popular. And now, of course, there are all different kinds of Christmas cards. You know, from the humorous through to the scenic and the types that perhaps we send from one country to another. To celebrate the differences and also the commonalities between different cultures.
Yeah, especially like Louis Prang is really kind of the noted for really getting the Christmas card started in the United States back in 1875. But you're absolutely right. His first cards had less to do with Christmas and more to do with like nature scenes and beautiful paintings and flowers and that kind of thing than it did for Christmas. And it wasn't until later, especially in the United States, when a gentleman by the name of Joyce Hall and his brothers back in 1915 started sending out Christmas card or mass producing Christmas cards out here. And of course, they became the Hallmark Company.
Mm.
So, and it's funny, they introduced the first Christmas cards in 1915, but do you know that just 2 years later, they were the first ones to introduce Christmas gift wrap as well?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because when you think about it, can there be any company more closely associated with Christmas than Hallmark? I mean, their company just predates the First World War, and you look now at the incredible range of different Hallmark Christmas-themed items. It's amazing to think, just how much that company has come on in the last century and more.
Well, and obviously World War One was a very important turning point that helped with the Christmas cards because you were finally able to, send something to loved ones while the war was going on, which helped, increase, your buoyancy for the season and everything because it was such a depressing point in time. But
Hmm.
yeah, so hey, did you know that one of the very first personalized Christmas cards where they actually, it's like they actually had your own picture on it, was
Mhm.
actually sent by Annie Oakley. Did you know
Ah,
that?
I honestly didn't know that.
And believe it or not, the card that she sent was herself in tartan. And the reason why is she happened to be in Glasgow, Scotland at the time doing a show there, and she sent it to her family for Christmas with, to say Merry Christmas and sorry I can't be with you. So it actually came from Scotland to the US, and it was by Annie Oakley.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because, the custom of sending out an official Christmas card, I mean, over here, it really starts with Queen Victoria. And of course, we know how many Christmas traditions are linked to the Victorian age, including things like the Christmas tree and Christmas crackers, things like that. But in America, am I not right in thinking that the first American president to send out an official Christmas card was Calvin Coolidge? Is that right?
He does so much research, folks. It's amazing. But yes, he is absolutely right. In 1927, Coolidge sent out basically just, kind of statements of how the US is doing and Merry Christmas kind of thing. But he was the first one to send an official Christmas greeting, so to speak. And then Herbert Hoover started by adding the first notes on Christmas and sending those out. But the actual first White House, our first Christmas cards to come out of the White House was from FDR, Franklin Roosevelt. And Eisenhower was the first one to do the first White House cards ever that officially depicted a card about the White House showing the decorations and that type of thing. And boy, I'll tell you, that grew from a couple thousand people receiving it to over 1.4 million annually in 2005. So that shows you how big Christmas cards have gotten from the White House on in all those years.
I mean, that is an amazing figure, and it just goes to show, I'm sure, how many people will receive these cards and keep them as collector's items.
Well, and speaking of collectors, I mean, a lot of them were viewed as true art and, have been framed and hung. I mean, my gosh, I remember getting Christmas. That was the big thing at Christmas time when I was growing up. I won't say what year, but it was a few years back. But yeah, we used to run to the mailbox every day to see what Christmas cards we got. And boy, I'll tell you, the elaborate way that people used to decorate their houses with Christmas cards and put them up, and everything from, attaching them to simple ribbons to making huge Christmas card displays. Boy, that was one of the joys I had growing up, and one of the traditions I wish we still continued. But it was so much fun to see cards come every year from and a lot of these people you'd only hear from maybe once a year, but it was cool to get a Christmas card from them. So, and it certainly did a whole lot better than the Christmas fruitcake.
Well, isn't that the astonishing thing about Christmas cards is the fact that, it's something that you can send to friends and family to wish them the compliments of the season, but you can also receive them from companies, large and small, sending out their commercial Christmas cards to wish all of their customers a happy Christmas period, and also charity cards as well, where the purchase of the card goes to a voluntary organisation. I know certainly over here that's been quite a big thing for the last few decades.
Yeah, charities, that is one of their major fundraisers, is to send Christmas cards out and remind them that, Christmas is a time for giving, and, they'll sweeten the pot with everything from return address labels to gifts, but it is the Christmas card that they send out that keeps them in the forefront of most people. It's also amazing how many people have designed Christmas cards. I mean, of course, everybody I think can remember back to the days of Norman Rockwell, and he actually did 32 different Christmas designs from 1948 to 1957. And actually, Hallmark still brings those back from time to time in limited editions for you to buy and send. So you should keep that in mind and take a watch for those. Some of those are the most charming Christmas cards I've ever seen and will ever see, probably. But he even had like Salvador Dali designed Christmas cards, and even Jacqueline Kennedy, the president or the wife of President John Kennedy, after his passing, she painted 2 designs of Christmas cards in 1963 for Hallmark and sold them as a benefit for the Kennedy Center when it was being built. So it's amazing some of the people that have designed Christmas cards and some of the art that has come out of that from Christmas cards, certainly suitable for framing.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned the issue of artwork, because over here, one of the things that has become quite popular isn't just the artwork on the Christmas cards, but also the artwork on the postage stamps as well. And you'll find that Royal Mail will issue every Christmas a different variety of Christmas-themed postage stamps to accompany your Christmas cards. Now, just to go one better than that, in 2004 in Germany, the post office over there commissioned a number of scented stickers to go out with your Christmas cards. And they had different scents like cinnamon and fir trees and gingerbread, just to give the cards that little bit of extra Christmas finesse. So there's always these new innovations.
Well, and I'll tell you, speaking of the Christmas stamps, The first Christmas stamp in the US actually came out in 1962. And as soon as they released it, they realized they didn't print nearly enough of those. And they wound up having to do a second printing. What was interesting was the stamp size changed a little bit, where it was 100 on a, for a sheet before, and then the second printing there was only 90. But even with that, they did 1 billion with a B copies printed and sold that very first year, and that's back in 62, if you can imagine.
That's amazing. It really is. And, when you look at the different trends in Christmas cards, I mean, over here, you see quite a few homemade cards. I mean, whether people are using handicrafts to do it, or they're perhaps using their computers to put the cards together. And there's also, the Christmas newsletter that you might send out to friends and family, just to keep people up to date with all the things that have been happening in your life over the past year, particularly if it's going to people that, perhaps you don't see or hear from that very often. But for sheer ambition, there was, of course, the largest ever Christmas card, and that one apparently was put together by Crisis, which is a not-for-profit organisation based in London. And they produced a card which was 4 meters high by 4 meters wide, which makes it around the same height as a red London bus.
Oh my gosh. Now, when they produce it, what did they do? Did they display it somewhere, or they
Oh yeah, I
certainly
mean,
didn't mail it?
no, there was a huge publicity campaign, and the Guinness Book of Records were out to make sure it fulfilled all the criteria. So it was certainly a Christmas card that you wouldn't miss if you saw it.
I guess you can see it from a long distance, I'm sure. And it's still amazing. I mean, they're still coming up with unusual Christmas cards. For instance, I got to share this. I got this one from a new dear friend of mine that, since we moved to Alabama, it was our first year in Alabama, and this lovely people that we met in Madison actually sent me what was a Hallmark signature card. But what's cool is this card is done by the ancient art of what they call quilling, which they take small strips of paper and they hand roll them, they coil them, and they shape them and individually place to create a literal detailed work of art. And this thing is absolutely gorgeous. It's 3D. I wish I could show you a picture of it, but it's it's Santa, of course, on, with his beard and his hat. And it's absolutely gorgeous. But if you ever get a chance to look at a quilling card, they're really unique and really beautiful. And I'm actually going to get that one framed. So,
Yeah.
and have it put in my office because it's just so beautiful. But even today, they're still coming out with very unique and different Christmas cards. And this is one of those traditions I actually hope I see start coming back, and we start doing more and more of it instead of less.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's an incredible thing, really, because you mentioned, those 3D effect cards, which really are an amazing, work of beauty, when you receive them. But I look back at all of the innovations we've had, in the last few decades. I think particularly in the 1980s and 90s, where you used to have a little miniature sound chip in the card, and when you opened it, you would get a sound sample. Now, I think these seem to have gone out of fashion now that paper recycling is much more of a thing than it used to be. But you look at how all of these different trends have come and gone, and yet the core idea of using a Christmas card to send greetings has always stayed the same, and I think there's something rather nice about that.
Absolutely. And, as you mentioned, my God, some of the things they can do now with the pop-up cards and everything else that takes place. I mean, really incredible works of art again. and just so unique and so different. And speaking of artwork, and we always think about, movies and that kind of thing. It's funny, even back in 1932, when Joyce Hall, or later Hallmark, did you know they licensed with this one company called Disney back
Ah,
in 32 to do Christmas cards?
I wonder what happened to them.
Yeah, you wonder, don't you? But I mean, and obviously Hallmark's still around. They're still doing well. Even Grandma Moses came out with a Christmas card, which I wasn't aware of until I started doing some more research on this. And she actually did Christmas cards for Hallmark as well. So
Hmm.
what was your favorite card growing up?
Oh, there were so many. I mean, anything involving Santa had to be good because you knew it had come from the North Pole.
Oh, of
So,
course.
you know, but yeah, I mean, I think there were always so many fantastic innovations. I mean, I always loved anything that was sort of, had a sort of sci-fi element to it. And anything I think that you were able to send to friends abroad as well, because I think people like to have a good old traditional Scottish greeting, particularly if they were living abroad. And I think you still see that in places like Australia and Canada and New Zealand, where there are large expat communities of Scots.
Yeah, absolutely. But and again, there's still a lot of companies out there doing this. And it's really neat to think about the fact that you can still get some very unique and different cards. They're certainly more mass produced now, and Hallmark is not the only company coming out with them, as that's obvious. But it's kind of cool to see what people are doing digitally and the personal cards that they send out as well, that they do on their own computer. And that's kind of fun because there's so many different ways to do artwork now on the computer, and it's really kind of cool. And again, whether it comes from Hallmark or whether you do it yourself, this is a tradition I would love to see continue. And if our listeners want to share some things and tell us, what was your favorite cards, or what do you remember growing up and getting Christmas cards and who they were from? I know my mother anguished every year over the list of Christmas cards, going, well, did I get a card from this person? And should I send it this year? Or boy, they moved away and I haven't heard from them. I mean, that used to be a very big part of our Christmas holidays, is just trying to figure out who to send them to and who they were coming from.
Yeah, and I mean, I know that you mentioned there the electronic Christmas cards. I mean, it's a wonderful thing, isn't it? Because I mean, over these last few years, people obviously, we've seen the price of postage go up. We've had this issue of environmental impact and recycling on one hand, and then it might be nothing more than perhaps somebody lives in an area where it's difficult for the postal service to get to them. So it's really nice to know that there is that alternative now where you can send somebody a Christmas greeting, as a kind of electronic card, and that way, nobody needs to be forgotten. There's so many different ways of spreading a bit of festive cheer.
Although I gotta say, I still love going into the post office every year and getting the new Christmas stamps. So
Hmm.
I've had elves, I've had reindeer, I've had Santas, I've had, of course, the nativity scenes, and I love every year to see the new designs that they come out with, just the stamps. So, and if you get something from me in June, chances are it's going to have a Christmas stamp on it.
Well, for so many people, it just isn't Christmas without Christmas stamps. You always want to see what the post office is going to come up with every year.
Well, and it's interesting. I mean, you mentioned the Victorian era, and again, Sir Cole lived right at that time. In fact, he founded the Victoria and Albert Museum. So it's funny that he lived at that particular time. And when Queen Victoria was the first one to bring a Christmas tree into the castle, it's like, here comes Christmas, and here it comes in spades. but it all formed from that Victorian era. But it's still such an important part, just like the Christmas tree is. Every year, Christmas cards, I still think, are a key part of our Christmas celebration.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think like all of the best traditions, it will always continue to develop and evolve. And at its heart, you still have that wonderful core objective of just letting people know that you're thinking about them. When the nights are long and the weather's cold.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, you can put whatever sentiment you want on it, but as long as you're letting people know that you're thinking about, that is one of the ways that we keep our own lives in touch with other people, and it's a good thing to do. And that's something that should never be forgotten.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why it has become such an important part of Christmas, just to let people know that you're thinking about them and that they're on your mind at that time of year.
Yeah, well, so get out there, folks, and go buy some Christmas cards or, create them yourself. But let's keep this tradition going because I think it's something that keeps us all closely bonded together. So, well, I think that pretty well covers that for today, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, if anyone wants to share their Christmas card memories with us, or if there's any particular designs that they feel that they want to bring to our attention, by all means, please visit our website at www.traditionally-speaking.com.
And we'd love to hear from you. So, well, very interesting what you found, Tom, and thank you for sharing that. So, and we'll look forward to getting another podcast out to you in next month.
Yeah, always a pleasure to talk to you, Joe, and looking forward to speaking to everybody again soon.
You take care, my friend, and take care, all my great listeners. And thank you for joining us.